let's talk about the Trey Lance thing. I know this is a very uncomfortable topic, and I think what's interesting about it is I don't know the right thing to do. I have a feeling I know the right thing to do, but it's still okay. Fair enough.
Yeah.
It's still early. We don't really know what Brock is, but I guess the hypothetical is, let's say Brock continues to do what he does and doesn't have a big stinker, and he's a starter next year. In that case, would Trey Lance have more value to the team as the backup quarterback or as a trade chip?
For me, it's 100% no question. He needs to stay with the team and be a backup quarterback. Having a $10 million quarterback room is still very cheap, even if Trey Lance is responsible for 90% of that.
It's true.
We're on our third quarterback. Brock Purdy is the third quarterback of this year. If that doesn't tell you that you need a top-notch backup, which I believe Trey Lance is, I think he could be a starter in this league. To me, it's no question you keep Trey Lance around because the odds are at some point next year we're going to see him again, even if Brock Purdy starts the season as the starter. It's just what we've seen for how many seasons has Kyle Shanahan had a quarterback play all 17 games?
What? And it was a 16-game season. You're right.
And I don't think that finding a backup quarterback at Trey Lance's level is that easy. I really don't. So to me, it's no question. You need to see Trey Lance and Brock Purdy play out this next season. And then at that time, you can consider whether or not you need to trade one or two of them. And I also, another reason, Grant, is because 49ers invested a lot in him. And I'm not 100%, unlike 99% of the 49er fans, I'm not 100% sold on Brock yet. I still want to see him finish this postseason. And I also want to see what happens next season. The sophomore slump is a thing as well. So I think we have a great opportunity to have two high-end young quarterbacks for under $10 million a year, and I think that's what you stick with.
I'm pretty sold on Brock. Now, I'm not saying I would give him like a huge contract extension in 3 years, but on this team at this contract, they're not going to have to get rid of players to keep him around. I think it's going to work. I think he's the guy. So I'm looking at Trey Lance as no fault of his own. He may end up being a better quarterback down the line than Brock Purdy, but I just don't see how he gets on the field here. So he's the backup, at least until something changes. And a backup is important, but let's do it this way. I don't know what he's worth in a trade. It's possible he's not worth much. I don't know.
I would think he would, personally.
What do you think he's worth?
I think there's a team out there. I mean, the Niners spent 3 firsts on him 2 years ago. What has changed since then? He just got hurt, right? I think there's a team out there that would give a first for Trey Lance. I do believe that.
Oh, damn. Okay, so let's say that the Niners could get a first. I'm thinking a second. But, hey, maybe they get a first. Let's say they make that trade. And they get the first for a late first, whatever, for Trey Lance. They have the pick. Do they spend that pick on a quarterback or another position?
I think the 49ers' number one need is tackle.
Okay, I agree. So you spend that pick on offensive tackle, cornerback, right?
Yeah.
So that kind of, to me, proves that he's more valuable as a trade chip than as a backup, because if you traded him, you wouldn't spend that on another quarterback. You would get a quarterback in round 7. You would use the Brock Purdy blueprint. You'd say, hey, whoever found Brock Purdy, Brian Griese, Clay Kubiak, Steve Slowick, whatever, you guys, the same things you were looking for, let's get a similar guy in round 7 or 2, and we can sign a guy. We can hedge our bets. But if we're trading Trey Lance and getting this first round pick, we're gonna get a starter. That's the whole thing here. Is that Trey? He's making $9 million next year to be a backup. It's the 8th highest cap hit on the team. You could trade him for a pick, get a starter who's worth $9 million a year, and get a backup, 2-3 backup quarterbacks as well. That's the calculation. Now, I understand it's complicated because Brock Purdy could fall back to earth. Brock Purdy could be a total fugazi. Trey Lance could end up being better than Brock. Brock could get hurt. All those things are true. But if you don't trade Trey now, okay, let's say you don't do what I just said, and you hold on to Trey just for all the reasons you said, and then, but Brock, stays basically the same and maybe misses a game or two, but it's still his job. The Niners eventually would have to not pick up Trey Lance's 5th-year option and then trade him next year. And then I don't know if you'd be getting a first-round pick for Trey when he's been on the bench essentially for 4 years. So these are all part of the calculation. And again, I don't really know what the right thing to do is here. I think they're not going to trade. I know what's not going to happen. What's not going to happen is they're not going to trade him. Yeah. It's not going to happen. But I do think they should talk about it, man, because it's the same thing as the Jimmy thing. They waited too long with Jimmy and essentially got nothing. There is a situation here where they get nothing for Trey Lance, and he just leaves in 2 years. And I think that isn't what you want if you already can see into the future that Brock's your guy. That's all I'm saying. I guess talk for 5 minutes. You go.
No, it's great. I think, and I'm glad that we have different opinions about this. I think it's great. But what I would say is we're assuming that Brock Purdy is going to be able to stay healthy. And the 49ers have not had a good history of that. The other thing that I don't think it's as easy to find Brock Purdy as maybe you think it is. I don't think it's that easy. I think the 49ers got pretty damn lucky with Brock Purdy. If it was that easy to find quarterbacks in late rounds, we would have seen it happen a lot more often.
Can I say what the Brock Purdy blueprint is?
Yeah.
Accurate. Don't have to be big. Accurate, experienced, mobile.
Well,
because what happens is you're getting placed on a better team than your college team.
Yeah.
And in a sense, it's going to be easy for you if you know what you're doing. You don't have to have a high ceiling. The high ceiling is Christian McCaffrey, Deebo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk, yada, yada, yada. You just have to know what you're doing and be not a project whatsoever and be somewhat competent. Like Brock Purdy checks all those boxes. To me, the quarterback at UCLA checks those boxes too. 23-year-old, 4-year starter, completed 69% of his passes. Nice. And good athlete. I feel like Tyler Huntley checks those boxes. Gardner Minshew checks those boxes. Like, there are so many quarterbacks who are experienced, cheap, young, that you could bring into this team and will probably look to your point, right? How many quarterbacks would look as good as Brock Purdy right now on this team? Not C.J. Beathard, Nick Mullins, but a lot of guys.
Well, there's one thing that you haven't mentioned that makes why Brock Purdy is so good, and it's in here. And I don't know if you can see that until it's here. Right, a lot of times you might see all those things, and when they come to the NFL, it's a different speed, right? And that pressure and the speed of it is very different for a lot of people.
It's true.
Brock Purdy has that mentality that you just can't see until you put him out there.
Unless Brian Greasy can see it.
Maybe he can.
I don't know, man.
Yeah.
Part of me feels like, hey, man, if you could do this, can we do this like again every year? Because
here's what you do. Why not keep Trey Lance and try to do it again this year anyways and see if you can. You know what I mean? And if they can, then hell, by all means.
Actually, they should. They really should. You should have 3 young quarterbacks on your team at all times. Yeah. I also like Tyler Huntley. I feel like he played it 3 years at Utah, completed 70% of his passes. He's a lot like DTR. He's a little bit older. I hate Greg Roman's offense with passion, and I think Lamar and Tyler Huntley need to get the hell out of there, get on a team with some freaking wide receivers and an actual NFL scheme. So, man, there's some interesting young, cheap backups out there. And I feel like what sucks with Trey is Trey shouldn't be a backup. Trey should be a starter. He should get to go somewhere and play, but that's really not the Niners' fault or their problem.
For Trey Lance, the best thing would be to get traded. But for a 49er fan and for the 49ers, I think the best thing is to keep him.
The last thing about him is that as a backup, he isn't necessarily the ideal one, even though he was great against the Texans, and maybe if the Niners' offense is in sync, he can be just fine. And he did run the Niners' offense that day. But other times, Kyle's changed the entire offense for him. And what else? He runs an entirely different offense.
If a team was to trade for Trey Lance, which team would be the best situation for Trey Lance? It's a tough question.
Most likely a team with a young coach who would have some time.
Yeah.
A team that's going to play him. And a team that maybe there's not too much media like scrutiny if they lose at first. I don't know.
How about Miami? How about Mike McDaniel building up Trey Lance? What do you think about that?
Tua had too much success. If Trey Lance doesn't kill it right away, everyone's going to be like, well, what about Tua? Yeah. I'm thinking a team like the Raiders or Minnesota, a team where like everyone's just not like the quarterback has to go and there's no nostalgia. And anyone that comes in, the fan base is going to be like, yes, we're committed. You know what I mean? Not like, oh, 1 foot in, because the Niners are always 1 foot in, 1 foot out with Trey.
Colts.
Yeah. The Colts. Yeah, someone that's just all in. Whoever it is has to be all in. The Niners never were.
Yeah.
The Bills were all in with Josh Allen in a way that a lot of teams wouldn't have been.
Yeah.
So it's got to be that. And to at least Trey is still really young. He's younger than a lot of these quarterbacks. He's way younger than Will Levis, whatever you pronounce that guy's name.
At some point, I think Trey Lance, whether it's on the Niners or some other team, I think he's going to get his opportunity, and I think he's going to be good.
That's what I think is going to be interesting. That might be Trey Lance's trade value right there. So Will Levis is supposed to be the toolsy project Josh Allen in the draft, right? But he's 24. So if you want a toolsy project, do you want the dude who was kind of mediocre at Kentucky for a while, or Trey Lance, who's 2 years younger and hasn't played in a while? Give me Trey. So I guess wherever Will ends up going, if he's late first, early second, that's kind of Trey's value right there, I would think. So which is kind of what we decided, like right in that 25 to 50 range, 25 to 35 range, something like that.